All right, everyone. Well, we have Angie Sartain with us, and she is going to be teaching today on when sheep bite, because inevitably sheep will bite. And so, how to manage conflict. So, Angie, welcome, and thank you so much just for your willingness to share with us, your willingness to, like I said earlier, not only share your experiences, but also just your knowledge. And so, we appreciate you. And we are like, I feel very ready for this. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm like, let's go.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, Grace. I appreciate the opportunity. And I will put a disclaimer at the beginning. Um, I am not an expert in this, but I am experienced in this. Um, so we've had lots of years of experience. I would like to say it was all been pleasant, but as you know, conflict is not always pleasant. And when you get bit, it hurts. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen because I created this really cute PowerPoint. So um, let's see.
Y'all are setting the bar really high for these meetings here.
Sorry about that. Um, okay. Oh, okay. I guess it's not gonna let me. I don't know why it's not gonna let me. But okay. Well, let's see. Okay. Well, that was really sad because I felt like, that was like super good. Okay. Well,
Did you,
anyways,
Angie, at the bottom, did you do the green share button? Did you
I
try to?
did. Let's see. Share. Okay. I push up. Wait a minute.
You got it?
I think I might be here.
We're seeing it. We got it.
Oh my goodness, we got it. How about that?
That's great.
Okay, look at my cute little sheep. Isn't he
That is
cute?
a cute little sheep. That one's cute. Some sheep aren't cute. That one's cute.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big animal lover, and I would go up to any animal and just be like, "Oh, hey," I mean, even well, maybe not spiders, but I don't think they're an animal. But anyways, I love animals. But one of the things that I like about sheep is that they are just I just think that they're so cute, they're so soft, they're so gentle until you aggravate one or till one gets aggravated with you. And they can seem harmless, but they actually can bite you. Um, and so as we know in ministry, conflict is always going to happen, right? It's not a if, but it's a when. And so that's something that I think we need to keep in the forefront of our mind, not like walking around looking like, is this a conflict day? Is this a conflict day? But I think we should keep in mind that when we are dealing with people, it's not a if, but it is a when. For example, we have a funeral today and we had a conflict last week because Danny asked somebody else to do the funeral dinner thing instead of a lady that normally does it. And so we had to help straighten up her panties there a little bit, and everything is good now. But so I want to look at Romans 12:18, and it says, if it possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And to that we say thank you, Jesus, for that example. But now equip us. And so what I want to do today is kind of unpack a little bit about like what understanding why do our sheep bite us? Like why do they do that? What would be a proper shepherd response to that, and how we can grow through the hurt, the pain, and sometimes the scars that these bites leave, and then give you some practical tools to just put in your toolbox. This is a subject that we could spend hours on unpacking. So I'm just giving you a skeletal view on that. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So let's understand. Oh, there's my scripture verse. Okay. So we're going to understand why sheep bite. Well, one of the things that cause sheep to bite is unmet expectations. And so we look at James 4:1. It says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? So when we meet people, every person that walks in your church door has some form of insecurity, and they also have some form of expectation from the leader. And when we don't meet their expectation, that we have no idea what it is, they get frustrated, and they can cause that could cause fights. Maybe it's one of those things you walk up and you're like, oh, hey, have we met before? Like our church is growing. Like every Sunday we've had like 4 new people. So we're like up to 180 now. So it's kind of like, have we met before? Oh, well, I've been here for 4 months. Oh, well, I'm sorry, And so then it's like, this starts happening. But these unmet expectations, so people expect more out of us than what we realistically can provide. So that can cause some frustration and cause a sheep bite, so to speak. Fear and insecurity. We talked about that just a few minutes ago. So in Numbers 14:2, Israel, they complained against Moses because they were fearful, right? So sometimes people out of fear and insecurity will give us a little bite. So when someone in your congregation feels threatened or they feel startled about anything, they're going to lash out because, as you know, nobody likes change. And if something happens, or it's out of the ordinary, or, God forbid the Holy Spirit move and it's not on the agenda, then, people are afraid of that. And they're afraid that, and so then they start, well, did you see, why is it, and then the gossip starts and the whispering start. So they lash out when they feel insecure or they're afraid of change or even threatened by new leadership. So if we have someone that we want to bring alongside of us, whether it's a new women's ministry leader or a new men's ministry leader, we've had all of these. It's like, well, why didn't I do it? I've been going to this women's meeting, all blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, maybe it's the attitude. I don't know. So the fear and insecurity. And then you have immaturity. I mean, you guys probably don't have immature people at your church, but in my church, we have a few. No, none, right? Yeah, right, Crystal. We have the same kind of people. Like they're all mature, but immaturity in their faith. So keeping in mind that some of the people or the majority of the people that we're dealing with, some of them are still babies in Christ, or some of them, even when they say this. Okay, side note, this is one of my pet peeves is like, well, I've been serving the Lord for 35 years. Okay, but you still cuss and you still backbite and you still cause division. So, so then you kind of look, I mean, I don't really say that to their face unless absolutely necessary, but the immaturity. So keeping that they're people that are immature are easily offended and they're quick to that fight. Like, they take your words, they twist it. So, but keeping these things in the forefront of our mind of why that they do what they do is going to be helpful. So, that's another thing is the immaturity in their faith. Conflicts often reflect spiritual immaturity more than the malice. Sometimes we are taken back because we're like, I would never expected that out of that person, but maybe that person had the fear or the unmet expectation, or maybe there was that part of them that God was showing a little bit of immaturity in their hearts, for the growth. And so keeping that in mind. And then this one is a big one, unresolved hurts or past wounds. This is a big one that I've found, when dealing with people, is that there is a lot of hurting people. And the old phrase is hurting people hurt people and are easily hurt by people. And so keeping that in mind, so sometimes someone in your congregation may be reacting not just to you, but maybe something in the back of their mind of like, well, that last leader did this, or when the last church guy did this last hurt, someone in their family that they got hurt with that was in a leadership position. Sometimes it's those hurts and unresolved past wounds that will cause a sheep to bite. Now, all of this, let's do one more. There is understanding is ultimately it's the enemy's strategy. The devil wants to cause division and disunity. And even I was looking at Zechariah 13:7, and he was talking about you strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. So in Zechariah, that's what he's talking like. They were just saying, hey, if we can get to the leadership, then it's going to cause division. It's going to be like a ripple effect. Now, on a little experience note here, we had this happen back in 2021, I think it was. And based off of what two people said, that one person allegedly said, I was in the hospital with my knee infection, so I wasn't there. And it like these two people caused so much dissension and discourse that it got to the point where I called a meeting, as my husband has the patience of Job and I do not. And so I called a meeting with these ladies and I said, look here, if we can't get this settled, the next step biblically is going to be, I'm going to bring it to the congregation and we'll hash this out in front of the whole church. Well, that kind of helped keep their mouth shut there for a while, but I had to go to each one of them individually and be like, what's the problem? What's the deal? Tell me your side. Okay, so here's where I'm going to tell you that you are not doing this in a biblical manner. That was hard. I'm not in this to really make a lot of friends. That sounds really bad, but but God's called me to minister to people, and that's what I'm going to do. I love these ladies. I would give my life for these ladies, but they will not be in my inner circle. Okay. So the enemy delights in causing division. And so we as leaders have to discern, why is this bite happening? What's going on? Instead of like, what's wrong with you? Let's just look at them and say, what happened? Are you struggling with unmet expectations? Are you struggling with, is this an immaturity thing? Did I do something? And we'll cover that a little bit later on too here. But when we understand why sheep bite, it's easier for us to not take it personally, and we can hopefully push the pause button and shepherd these people with patience. That's an ugly word. I struggle with that. That's one thing that God's still working on me with, is being patient with certain people. And so that's something that kind of just in a real skeletal view of why sheep strike out, why they bite, and as pastors, we try to do all the right things of like, I'm gonna go visit you in the hospital. I'm gonna visit your great aunt Susie, who I don't even know and doesn't go to our church. And you do all of these things because you love people and you're trying to be a good shepherd. However, it just like any animal, one wrong move we make, or if it sense something, then they're going to turn on us in a dime. And I'm not saying that like to be like never trust anybody. I'm trying to paint a picture of like Jesus was bit all the time. I mean, even by his own disciples. And so we need to just be aware that bites are going to happen. So you keep your Band-Aids, you keep your Neosporin, your alcohol, peroxide, whatever, you keep it handy because bites are going to happen. And so I want to take a little look now on Jesus's response to conflict. The first thing that I would suggest is that we need to guard our own heart. And Proverbs 4:23 tells us that above all else, that we are to guard our heart, for everything that we do flows from it. And so we need to make sure that we are guarding our own heart. This is something that I've, even in my practice and personal life, is that guarding your heart is technically setting a boundary. So you're setting a boundary around your heart. Like, what are the things, like, what are your non-negotiables and what are your negotiables? Like, you know what, a sheep bite, okay. But also you're setting a boundary around your heart to protect what God has deposited in there, but also to be able to respond in a way that's going to reflect a godly character. And I can tell you multiple times when my mouth has went ahead before my heart and my head, and then I would go to Danny and say, just want to let you know that so-and-so is probably going to be in your office because this is what I said. And it just kind of came out, and he would roll his eyes and go, oh boy. And especially like if it came to my children, I could talk bad about my children because they're mine, but don't attack my kids, but we have to guard our own heart. So guarding our heart is going to help us to pause, to respond and not react to the conflict. It's going to help us check our motives and our emotions behind what we're feeling and what our emotions behind what we're wanting to say. But so here's something you can ask yourself is, am I reacting or am I responding? If I'm reacting to this conflict, am I reacting out of hurt or pride or defensiveness? So those are things that you can kind of help yourself think about, like, okay, so I mentally have had to teach myself to visualize a pause button in my head. And something in counseling is sometimes silence is golden. Someone coming up to you and they're chewing you out, it's okay to just look at them and not respond. It's okay to just be like, I'm counting to 25 in my head so I don't knock yours off. It's okay to do that because we're one. Sorry. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and my husband, my dad was a street kid, so kind of sometimes it comes out, but we're in a safe space, right? So we got to, but guard our hearts. That's so important. A lot of times we feel like we should just be able to put our hearts out there for everybody to trample on and all that. That is not the God way. We have to guard our hearts. We have to guard what God has given to us, but yet be able to be vulnerable and transparent when we need to. Okay. So guard our hearts is one thing. Jesus also, he was a very good example of learning to respond and not react. So in James 1:19, it says, everyone should be what? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. I've had this verse repeated to me multiple times. You have 2 ears, 1 mouth. That's why, okay, thank you. Perfect. So Jesus modeled this even when he was attacked. Now, I've been watching The Chosen. I'm on my second round of it. And on The Chosen, I like how they depict Jesus and how these people are yelling and screaming. He's just staring at him. I'm like, oh, but then you have Peter who's like, I'll take care of them, Lord, and it's like, but we've got to learn to respond and not react. I learned how to react, and sometimes I still do that. And that's why I have to visualize the pause button in my head. So Jesus modeled calm responses. Now, it takes practice. Okay. Remember, this is just a skeletal view. So Jesus's practical tool, what I've learned from him is to pause, to pray, and then proceed. To pause, to pray, then proceed. And it's okay if there's someone coming to you to say, I appreciate what you're saying. Let me take this to the Lord and I will get back to you. It's okay to do that. We don't have to address it right that very second, unless it's a life and death situation and we feel like we need to address it right then, but we need to pause, pray, and proceed. And that if we can practice those things, that will be helpful when conflict does arise. The other thing is that we need to seek understanding before resolution. Now, Proverbs 18:13 says to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. This is one of my favorite things in communication when I'm teaching couples on communication, because most people listen to respond instead of listen to understand. And that causes multiple problems because have you ever been in a conversation with someone and you're trying to share your heart, and you're wanting them to be like, oh, that's fantastic. And then they go, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. Well, when I was over, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, you didn't hear a word I said, So we want to seek understanding, like, why is this person so hurt over the pews, moving over an inch? Why are they so upset about the coffee being stronger than what it was last Sunday? We've had that too. Who made the coffee? It's so strong. A little water in it, hey, that's a solution. I like strong coffee, but I did not make it. My younger son did, and he's like me. So, I'm like, okay, whatever. But seeking understanding before resolution. Don't jump right into like, oh, let me fix this. Let me fix this. Let me fix this. Understand why they're feeling what they're feeling or why they're bringing this to you. And we go back to, right, unmet expectations, immaturity, or is it fear, or is it hurt, or is this just the enemy? When I was talking to you, when I was mentioning about what we had, that conflict we had, it was straight up Jezebel spirit. And I kept telling my husband, I said, I'm telling you, this is Jezebel's spirit. We dealt with this when we lived in Batesville, Indiana, and we we're dealing with it now, and I am putting up with it. So we are going to, nip this in the bud. And so, sorry, hold on, I'm being disturbed. No, it's in your office. Sorry. Anyway, so, but seek to understand before seeking resolution. Conflict is usually, not always, but typically can be diffused by simply listening to what they're saying. So if you're listening to understand them, then you can diffuse the intensity of that conflict 9 out of 10 times. You can ask them questions like, if you find yourself getting frustrated or you're not understanding them, you can ask them like, help me understand what you're feeling. Help me understand. Can you explain to me, what is, did I do something? Is there something I can help you with? Is there something we need to walk through? Kind of like those open-ended questions of, that wasn't open-ended, but help me to understand what you're feeling. Help me to understand where you're coming from. I really want to understand. I really want to know why this is frustrating you. So help me to understand that. Can we unpack that a little bit more? And so those are helpful things with that. So confrontation in conflict is not fun, but we've got to learn to do it with grace and truth. Jesus modeled this in John 1:14, and then he also gave us more specific instructions in Matthew 18:15, like go to them privately, address the issue respectfully, and hopefully it goes there. If not, then you just keep going on. Like I had to say like, okay, well, our next step, if we can't stop this, our next step is to bring it, because we went individually, we went to the board, and then I was like, okay, the next step is the congregation. And so that's up to you. I mean, I don't want to do that particularly, but if you want to, that's great. We can do it. So, but we do need to address conflict, but we need to make sure that it's encompassed and surrounded with grace and truth. We need to show the love and be patient with them. But we can't shy away from addressing if there's a harmful behavior or if there's a sinful behavior. We can't be like, oh, so timid. I mean, we have to be firm but gentle, right? It's just like parenting. We have to be kind of firm but gentle. So don't shy away from the truth of the gospel, because that's what we're here for, is to tell them, okay, look, even in Corinthians, they judged other Christians like, hey, you ain't acting right, straighten up, but maybe not in those terms, but we use the polished version. And then we need to set healthy boundaries. I am big on boundaries. I used to not be, because I didn't know and didn't understand, because I was a people pleaser, but we need to make sure that we have good boundaries. Being a shepherd doesn't mean that we have to be a doormat. That was a message I received growing up, was pastors are doormats. You just let people do whatever, but we set our boundaries, right? The negotiables, non-negotiables. We look at Jesus' example, where he often withdrew to pray. In Luke 5:16, we see that, and he set limits. And boundaries are not to keep people out or to keep you sheltered. Boundaries are to protect you and the sheep, right? I mean, they're for protection. So there's that. And then we need to make sure that our end goal is to pursue peace and not victory. So what do I mean by that? By Romans 12:18, we're called to live at peace, but we're not called to win every argument. So it's kind of like, if the church is like the bride of Christ, I tell couples this all the time: you can fight to be right, or you can fight to be married, but you can't do both. And so it's the same way in the church realm. We can fight to be right, or we can fight for unity. And sometimes we have to say, you know what? That's your perspective. This is my perspective. We're just going to have to agree to disagree, but I love you anyways. And we can still have unity in our church. And so sometimes it just means that. Okay. So the next one is growing through conflict. Growing is sometimes fun and sometimes painful. And so conflict can actually help refine us. It helps us. When a conflict comes, we should always look inside, like, okay, did I actually do something? Is God trying to show me something? But in James 1 and 2, fun verses, that what does trials produce? Trials, conflicts, whatever, they produce maturity. And so we are all still learning to be mature in Christ every single day. We're all learning. And so growing through conflict, it can refine us. It can handling conflict God's way. It grows patience and wisdom and spiritual strength, even though it may go against our flesh. And sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna practice that fivefold ministry on you, but that's not godly. But again, please understand my background, and Jesus is working on me. But it can refine us. It can also strengthen relationships, which is so weird. Proverbs 27:17 says it's like iron sharpening iron. So sometimes conflicts can strengthen relationships. When we have a conflict with someone, listening to understand and practicing these steps can actually help strengthen that relationship. We had one person come to us and was complaining about something that Danny had said from the pulpit, and they unpacked it, and now it's like one of our biggest cheerleaders. And so it doesn't always work that way. Okay. So that's why the word can is in there. So it can strengthen relationships. Doesn't always work that way, but let's keep that in the forefront of our mind. Like, we want to strengthen this relationship. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about unity and growing, and about being disciples of Jesus. Confronting conflict protects the flock. Okay. So I was having Danny go over there saying, he's like, what do you mean by that? And so he was giving me and he did say it just like that. So I said, but what happens is we have to confront conflict, because our job as leaders is to also protect the whole flock. If we have one or two that's coming in and causing issues, we've got to confront that so that we can prevent even more head-on division or gossip or bitterness from this spreading around. So it is important, even if you're uncomfortable, it is important that we confront that. And again, that's another whole lesson, so this is a skeletal view, but just know that even if you are a person that you're more passive, it's still important to confront conflict. Jesus did it all the time, and he did it in a loving way. And so you don't have to go up and say, hey, listen here, you're causing this problem. You're like, hey, I just noticed you're feeling a little sad, or you seem a little upset, you seem a little frustrated. Is there something I can do to help? So there's ways that you can go up and approach them on that. Okay, now the fun stuff. Practical tools for leaders. Okay, so developing emotional resilience, something that I've been learning in my practice and also in my walk with Jesus, and all of the fun things that we get to go through, is having emotional resilience. Emotions are not good or bad, they're emotions, but what we do with them determines if they're going to be healthy or not healthy, or helpful or hurtful. And so we need to develop emotional resilience. How do we do this? Well, here's your church answer. We need to pray. Okay. We need to make sure that we have good rest, and we need to make sure we have some accountability partners. We also need to make sure that we are in tune with our own emotions. So when someone comes up with a conflict, and we're going to naturally feel something because we're emotional beings, but then we have to ask ourselves, okay, this person said this, I felt this, and I thought this, and I responded this way. So let me unpack, why did I feel this way? Why did I think this? Why did I respond this way? And then you evaluate that, if that's good, if you did something helpful or hurtful. But we have to also reflect on our own emotions when we're feeling something, so that we can build up emotional resilience. Does that make sense for everyone? Emotional resilience. Okay. Isn't she beautiful? I can't do that. That hurts my legs to look at that. So, but we need to cultivate a culture of grace. So, teaching forgiveness and peacemaking anytime that we can, but we also model that, right? So grace is not only grace is also that empowerment to do what Jesus asked us to do. And so we have to try to cultivate that. And in my example of the hoopla we had several years back, I will tell you that I lost my cookies in a board meeting, and I straight up stood up and said, that's it, I'm done. And I looked at my husband and I said, we're resigning tonight. And then of course everybody's like, whoa, and I was I did not act in a Christ-like manner. I didn't cuss or anything, so that's good. But I did not act in a Christ-like manner. I later had to go back and to all those people in the board meeting, and me and Danny individually, went one-on-one with them, and I apologized for my outburst of anger. I did say to them, hey, I'm sorry that I did not act in a Christ-like manner. I allowed my flesh to get ahead of me. I spoke out of anger, and that should have never have happened. However, what I said was accurate and true and from my heart. I wish I would have said it in a different way. That was hard, looking them straight in the face and all of that. But I needed to do that. One, to show them and model that, hey, even leaders make mistakes. Even leaders can cause problems. And so this is how we do this. This is how we handle that. Keeping short accounts. This is kind of, as women, I find that this is hard because of our brain being run by emotions and all like a big ball of twine, and it's attached to everything. So it's kind of hard for us. I don't know about you. It's hard for me to not keep an account of what somebody has done to me. But I think that's, forgiveness is not a feeling. It's an action, just like love. And so sometimes it takes months to kind of walk through that and unpack that. But as long as we're trying to do that, but we can't, it's more beneficial if we don't allow these offenses to pile up on us, and that we can deal with them quickly. And it doesn't always mean that that person is going to forgive us, or we're going to forgive that, or not forgive us. That person, that when we see them, that we're like, I can't believe that they're the ones that are arguing about that carpet. And like, my new philosophy is kind of like the penguins of Madagascar, where they just kind of roll their eyes and there's like, smile and wave, boys, smile and wave. That's kind of my thing that I'm taking on now. But try to practice not keeping short accounts of things that are happening. It's okay to feel them. It's okay to have your day of like, I just am so ticked at so and so. But then you know what? Then we just look at it and we're like, all right, we understand why. All behavior makes sense in context. So if we understand their context, we can also erase some of those offenses as well. And then remember your calling. We are called to help people, and we are called to shepherd people. And people are people. Sometimes they're too people-y. And I was joking with Grace, and this is the standard joke I think all pastors and their wives have, like, ministry would be so much fun if we didn't have to deal with people. I'm thinking we should start a church of dogs, because they're always happy to see you. They're good listeners. So, but you know what though, ultimately we are called. God's called us to shepherd people, and he knows that people are people. And if we understand that we serve the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and he is the chief shepherd, when our sheep act up, we give them to him and let him do what he needs to do. And that's where we need to be. Sheep they're fun, but they can be irritating. But our job is to be more like Christ and to shepherd them the best we can. I think that's all that I have. So
That was so
there
good.
we go.
Yeah, that was so good, Angie, so beneficial. And I really appreciate how you just that remembering your calling, like in all of this, remembering that you are called, which means if he calls us, he equips us. And so I appreciated that. Very relatable, like even like all the little things you said about the carpet and the funeral dinner and all the things. It's also relatable. It's like it's very comforting just to hear the same things I struggle with on a day-to-day, you guys get it. You struggled with that too. So you opened with talking about, so we'll do question and answer. If you guys I had a question for Angie. So if you have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself
I can quit at any time, honey.
Let's see. I think some people might be unmuted already. let me see if there is a way for me to unmute people or to mute people. But okay, I'm trying to find that. When you started out just saying remembering why people bite, it reminds me like how when you set a goal, they always tell you remember your why, remember your why. And so when you said that, it just reminded me in all things, we need to remember the why, even why people are treating us the way they're treating us, because that list you gave us was so good just to remember that's coming from somewhere. There's a source of that burst or a source of that, whatever it might be that's coming at me. And so I loved that. I loved remembering the why. I was going to ask you, you mentioned the Jezebel spirit, and I think probably all of us at some point have dealt with that sort of a thing. Would you just explain a little bit about the Jezebel spirit, like how you recognize it? Does that make sense? How you recognize it, maybe even without specifics, just how you have that conversation with someone who has a Jezebel spirit.
Yeah. So we've had quite a bit of experience with that. When we lived in Batesville, Indiana, there was a lady that operated with the Jezebel spirit and caused a lot of division. So here in the good old place of Salina, Kansas, so there was some gossiping basically going on. So the Jezebel spirit's one that just likes to control. Typically women are more susceptible to it than men, and but men are not exempt. And so when I say that, it's like they're not like possessed, but they are utilized by this spirit. So it's just like, I mean, basically it's all the enemy. We've just have given names for it because, like, if you look at Jezebel in the Bible, Jezebel was manipulative, conniving, wanted to cause division, and when she just spoke things, what did it do to Elijah? It scared the bejeebers out of him, right? And so he was like went and hid and all of this stuff. So those are signs of like when someone, if you have someone that's like gossiping, and you kind of say, hey, we probably shouldn't be talking about that. If they're receptive to that, great. But what we found was these it was one individual that was more predominant, that she was very, or is very, disgruntled. She's very very gossipy, very negative. And she, anytime you would talk to her, she would say her 2 cents worth about someone else's family. And so it's one of those things that if they're constantly trying to cause you to look negatively at someone else, then that's a red flag. So ultimately, the goal of the Jezebel spirit is to cause division. And that's what this one did. It was left unchecked. And we kind of was just dismissing it, and being like, oh, well, that's just this person, until it got intense. And then it went from this person to this person to this person to this family to this family. And then we're just like on the phone and we're like, hey, this has got to stop. And they're like, well, like, no, this has got to stop. And so when we confronted it, this person was actually on the board. And so we were in a board meeting, and I was sitting in on it because I told my husband I was going to sit in on it, and I'm the neck that turns the head. I mean, no. I mean, I'm submissive. No, I told him, I said, we're going to address this. And again, he's got the patience of Job. I'm more confrontational than he is. And so I addressed it. I just said, there's a Jezebel spirit that is operating in this team right here, and we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And that kind of opened the door, and they're like, well, what do you mean? And so I just said, well, this is what you're doing. Da, 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 da. So with the Jezebel spirit, you have to be direct. You have to, you're not be mean, but I was very direct. I was like, hey, this is what you're doing. You're spreading this gossip. We ask you to stop. You're continuing to do it, and it needs to stop. and there was some intense discussion with that. So so just if someone is unwilling to stop gossiping or causing problems, then that's an issue, and that's a red flag. You know, but then again, I mean, we also had someone come in that was very schizophrenic, and Danny didn't know that, and I was like, okay, so talking with this person, and she was like, oh, praise the Lord, and then wrote him these ugly letters, and then would call the church and saying all kinds of threatening things. And Danny's like, well, that's just weird. And I said, well, I think she's schizophrenic. And lo and behold, she was. And so she went and got help, and she's moved on, and she's doing great. But I think we just have to be aware of those things, you know, like the red flags of like non-compliant, the continuing to gossip and backstab, but it all is geared towards the leadership. Okay. So it's geared towards the leadership, because again, that's what the enemy ultimately wants, is to attack the leadership. So when they're backbiting, and you know, you're going to have your people who are like, oh, pastor's message went 5 minutes too long or whatever. And that's a little different.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And I like your encouragement to just be direct. I know for some of us that's hard, but they're being very direct in their you know, refusal to submit, or their refusal to stop gossip, whatever it is. So just to be direct, I think that's really good. And yeah, you did a great job of explaining that Jezebel spirit. It's interesting and sad how prevalent I feel like that is in the body.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question for Angie? You can just unmute yourself. And I think I have it set the correct way, where if you ask a question, you're not going to be on the recording. So I think I did it right this time. Last time I didn't do it right, and I had to like message the people who were on the recording like, okay, it does show your face. Is that okay? So, anyways, or any thoughts of your a situation that you're facing that you want to speak in generalities about, or something that Angie shared that you have run into as well? Anything like that?
I find it interesting as you were talking about why sheep bite, but then also our responses, because like in my own life, when you were talking about, well, why do sheep bite? I was like, oh, well, that's why I'm reacting to the conflict, because maybe I've had unmet or even unspoken expectations, or my own fear and insecurity. And then this conflict arises and I make it worse because of my reactions, which stem from the same reason that others are biting in the first place.
Right.
Okay, let's check that in my own self. So I found that interesting. So
That's
it
really
is
good.
a
That's
good
such a
point.
good point.
Some of the conflict that we've had, I would say a year ago, and then kind of resurfacing, but not like John and I are probably some of the only ones that know about it. But if they're not willing to um face this conflict and deal with it in the biblical way or at all, they usually leave, unless it is that Jezebel spirit. Like if they're not wanting to come under that authority, you know, and that does show their own immaturity and probably all of those things all tied up into one. And it's like, I can't help you. And, you know, we're not budging on our stance on, um, you know, expectations to be on the worship team, for instance, or anything like that. So we're not going to make an exception for you. They end up leaving. So,
Yeah.
in a sense, God wants a healthy church. And if people are not willing to get healthy, then I feel like to a point he's gonna weed that out, so it's not a detriment to the rest of the flock.
Right.
Right. And I have again, this is safe place. But I had another pastor's wife when I was in my master's program, and she said to me, Angie, every church needs a good bowel movement. And so we have to, but I mean, I know that's kind of graphic, but I mean, we have to keep that in mind, right? So not everybody is meant to stay at our church. God opens the door and directs people in. And some people come in and they cause problems, and we say, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, right? So we got to keep going, and you have to be, as a leader, Crystal, like you said, you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with that, because it's not about us chasing after people. That's not our job. Our job is to teach and to train people to go out and do the mission.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I love all my quotes. I have like the quotes I have so far are I'm not in this to make friends. I mean, honestly, I know you said that sounded harsh, but like that's really good. That's a really good, because that's that whole I just want everyone to like me. I just want everyone to. So, and then I also had the quote written down of I loved fight to be, you can fight to be right, or you can fight to be married, but you can't do both. And then I just added my third favorite quote, which is every church needs a good bowel movement. Um, but yeah, I think that that first one I shared about I'm not in this to make friends. I really like that. I really like that. It puts things into perspective. It goes back to our calling. And in the meantime, we will make friends. I realize that. But it's that idea of not everyone is going to be, like you said, in that inner circle. That's not wise. That's not safe. Um, how do you proceed when you feel like I just always want people to understand where I'm coming from, understand, and maybe it's beyond understanding, like understand my boundaries. I need you to accept my boundaries. Like, how do you communicate all of that? Do you communicate your boundaries? Do you, I mean, we can't make someone understand where we're coming from, but I know that that is an issue I deal with. I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. How do you deal with that in conflict?
Well, it's challenging, because when you come from the perspective or the mindset of like, I just want you to understand, that also kind of has a taste of, I want to make sure that we're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that we're still going to be friends. We're still going to like each other. That's not always the case.
Okay.
And so we have to, we, first of all, we have to discover what are our personal boundaries. Like when people are talking to me in my practice, I've learned a lot of new words. And so they say all kinds of stuff, and I let that go because that's their place. In the church realm, when people say certain things, I'll say, hey, we need to make sure we're careful with what we're saying. We need to be cautious of that, setting those boundaries. And we don't have to sit there and go, well, this is my boundary and now you're crossing it. But we can say it ways like, hey, can you please take your tone down a little bit? Because it seems like if it's, I don't want this to get out of hand, but if we can't, maybe we can table this and come back to it. That's setting a boundary. But I think it's okay to have those, because I'm not a person that I'm just going to like, you're not going to come into my office and just scream at me and yell at me up one side and down the other and expect me just to be, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, sister or brother, but I think it's okay to be like, whoa, I see that you're upset. Let's just take a moment. Let's kind of breathe, and then we can go. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work, it's perfectly okay to say, look, I don't think we're going to get anywhere with I hear the hurt in your voice, and I think maybe it'd be better if we just table this for now, and let's look at maybe tomorrow at whatever time, or set a time to come back and visit that. But make sure you let them know you really want to hear their heart, you really want to hear where they're coming from, but you just feel like it's not the right time because the emotions are high.
Yep, that makes sense. Yep, I like that. Table it and revisit.
And that's perfectly okay. I think sometimes, and I've learned this the hard way, where I feel like, oh, gotta do it right now, to make sure it's okay, because what if they go and da da da. But here's the thing, that's that pause, right? That's the pause, that's the prayer, and then we can proceed.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly okay as leaders. We don't have to do an instant, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you said that you visualize a pause button in your mind.
Oh, I do.
I'm allowed to, that button exists, and I'm allowed to access that button when it's not a good time. It's not a good time. Like I shouldn't respond to this right now. That's
Right. Right. Because I mean, we're human too, and our emotions can get way up there. And it was like, I'm having a hard time wrangling this one in. So I better have a pause. And because
yeah.
you know, I don't want to have to go to my husband or my board and say, hey, by the way, so and so is going to be here and telling you all the ugly things I said.
Right. Anybody else have any questions for Angie? I did put in the chat, I put a link to a Google Doc, and I'll put that in when I put the recording on Elevate, I will also put that link there, but it just kind of outlines what she shared today. Any other thoughts or questions you guys have?
Um, I enjoy that you said to take a pause. How do you handle, because as most of you know, I'm pretty new to all of this. So how do you handle it when you're caught off guard? Like
That is a really good question.
blindsided and in a crowd of people.
I think that's a really good question. Nobody likes to be blindsided, and it is kind of hard. Our first response is like, whoa, like we're like, you know, that's where that training yourself to be like, okay, so you're caught off guard. We got to train ourselves that the first response for us is to be like, okay, oh, wow, okay, can we go? Let's go to here. I want to talk about it. You know, let's go over to this room if somebody's catching you off guard, and you can just say, or I mean, that pause button. That's like so important. Like, I mean, unfortunately I've had this experience too, where they're like in the foyer and they're like, and you're like, and everybody's watching you to see how you're going to respond to this situation, and you feel like you're in the hot seat, and then you're like the angel on this side and the devil on this side, and like, and you're like, but the pause button is so important. So somebody catches you off guard, make that your first go-to. Make that your first go-to anyways. I'm going to pause. Okay. You're like, wow, this, and it's okay to vocalize it. Wow. I mean, I'm sorry, you kind of caught me off guard here. I want to hear what you're saying. Can we go to the other room? But that pause button is so important to do. And unfortunately, Jolene, we're going to get caught off guard because that's how the enemy works.
Yeah, I think that's I was also thinking about, especially on Sundays, it's interesting how many people right before you get up or right before you come off of the platform, it's interesting how many people think, okay, this is a really good time for me to bring up my grievances. And so when Angie was talking about boundaries earlier, it just made me think, oh yeah, I do have that boundary that people know about. So I will just say, sometimes it's simple, like, can I add this to the announcements? Can I sometimes, and I just tell them, on Sundays, I am focused on other things, email me. And so a lot of people have picked up on that now, but especially when it has to do with conflicts, I, as you were sharing that, I thought, oh yeah, I am good at that. I am good at saying, we can't talk about this right now. Can you email me and we'll find a time during the week to talk. But I think that that's what's hard, is when you feel the pressure, like they need to talk right now and I'm refusing them of their need, that's but recognizing, well, I have some needs too. And right now on a Sunday morning, that's peace and clarity and clarity of mind. But yeah.
And that's so good, Grace. And that's that boundary piece. That's that guarding your heart piece too, is that, Sundays are our sacred days. Like we have obligations, we have things to do, but you're right. People are like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity because, there's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday that I could have called or texted them, but this is the perfect opportunity. And so I think that those are good responses of just knowing like, okay, so on Sundays or Wednesdays, I'm automatically going to have my pause button in my pocket ready to go. And when they say that, we have that automatic response, like, man, I not have time to unpack this with you, but I really want to. So let's email me. Let's set up a time. Boom.
Yeah.
Just have a general statement. I think that's great.
And that's really good, like you said, to validate this is really important. This sounds very important to you. I want to give it my full attention. So let's schedule something. I like that.
Right. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's setting a boundary, and not all your sheep are going to appreciate that. And they're going to be like, well, I want to talk about it now. You're like, well, I understand that, but this is Sunday. This is not the right time.
Right.
And you may have to get firmer. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, some people think that they're like the privileged sheep that, well, I know that's
Yeah.
everyone else, but I should be
Right.
able to bring this up.
Well, and I've even had ladies like, so I try, this is our traditional part, but like when Danny starts closing in prayer, I go to the front door so I can try to greet people because I like to hug and stuff like that. And I've had people come and say, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you I need to talk to you. And I used to go, oh, okay. And well, that distracts from me meeting all these other people. And so I would just say, I really want to hear from you. You either can wait till all these people are gone, or we can set up another time this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, those are things that are okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, anyone else have a closing question, closing thought? I did have one more thing if no one else has anything. Okay. Well, I was just going to ask you, our last thing, Angie, if anyone is listening to this and thinking, I need to improve the way I set boundaries. I need to improve my communication, the directness you were talking about. Like if anyone, because you do counseling, I mean, you do some of that. So how is someone watching the recording or someone in the Zoom, if we're feeling like I need more one-on-one time with Angie so she can teach me how to do all of this, how do we connect with your counseling program or like, get a counseling appointment set up with you?
Okay. Well, I can just give you my cell phone number. I mean, that's fine. It's a Google Voice number, which is actually like what I use as my work number.
Oh, okay.
We can just do that. That would be easy to do, or you can just email me. Either way. So the phone number is 785 380 9345. And so that is my Google Voice number. So if you call that and I don't answer, it'll ask you like your name and all that kind of weird stuff. I just do that. It just goes my personal cell phone number, but I'm okay giving you my personal cell phone number too. I guess I could have done that. But I'm open to helping. I mean, I'm open to helping anything. And as far as the email, you can just, let's see, which one would be good. Probably my ministry email, which is, I wish I had it memorized. Okay. It's live above, LIVEABOVE .MIN @gmail.com.
Okay.
But I love to do this. I love to talk about communication because that's really the crux of all of this, is just learning how to communicate better. And
yeah. And I think some of us just need to grow in that confidence, that we can, and then moving beyond we can to we should. Like this is good for everyone, because it's good for our sheep too if they learn appropriate and inappropriate ways to talk to people, for them to handle conflict inappropriately or appropriately. So that's really good. Well, thank you so much, Angie, on behalf of all of us. Thank you for your time and again just your wisdom and sharing with us. And I don't know, do you have any closing thoughts, like something that you just want to leave us with, and you don't have to have something, but
well, I think the thing that I would just say that my and Danny's mentor said to us 37 years ago was this: you better know that you know that you know that you're called, because one day you're going to question that. And so there were times when Danny and I would be like on a bike ride and I'm like, I'm done. And he's like, but are you called? Stop asking that question. I think that's my big takeaway, is that if you know that you're called, you're going to question it, but you better have it down from Missouri terms down in your knower, because that's going to come up. And conflict is an easy way for that to challenge your thinking on that.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Know that you know that you know. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
For joining us too. And I'll send out information about the next one. This one was super helpful. I'm pretty sure I'm going back to the recording and rewatching it. So it'll be on Elevate. If you're like that too, like what was that she said? It'll be on Elevate. And this week, just remember, every church needs a good bowel movement. Just remember. that. So, all right, ladies. Well, I'm gonna turn off the recording